criminals has stolen 1.2 billion, yeah, you heard me, billion with a B, 1.2 billion usernames and passwords. The security company that uncovered this breach says the hackers stole the information from more than something like 420,000 websites. It probably means one of the ones you've used.
One night you place your internet-loving set of keyboard fingers down to rest, safe in the knowledge you have done everything possible to protect yourself, your money, and your closely guarded Twitter account. Wake up the next morning and discover there's an excellent chance every little sliver of info about you may have been hacked and is already floating about the globe with someone about to use your identity for nefarious purposes, or just keep sending you spam of kittens and porn sites. Welcome to the new world. Sorry to say it is the same as the old world, what we have been used to for the last decade or so. Let's welcome into MidPoint, Director of the Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Stephanie Bucci joins us today. Stephen Bucci, I should say. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Steve, let me talk to you a little bit, though, about Hold Security here, which is the company that's involved. This is a company in Milwaukee that says they have been finding these companies, and they have been following this group for several months, and they know an awful lot about the Russian hackers. Doesn't this seem awfully convenient here, especially when you consider they're a company that sells their services to companies to keep hackers out?
Well, I mean, it sounds kind of fishy, but they're in the security business, so they're looking into it. They're looking for vulnerabilities. They're trying to find these things to enhance their own credibility. It doesn't mean the information they have is false.
How do we know exactly what we're dealing with? Outside of Hold Security, is there any other way to basically verify what they have told us?
Well, the sort of communications community that's out there, that both the hackers and the good guys are crawling all over this report right now, trying to determine whether it's valid, how much of it is valid, and are there any holes in it. So I think in the very near future, if this report is false or overblown, it'll be spilling out all over the place.
Give us then an idea, if you will, from those outside of Hold, but those in the government and those who actually follow these things on a regular basis. I would imagine that they've seen this coming for some time, that certainly 1.2 billion is something that catches everybody by surprise. But the fact that it's out there and the fact that there are people out there selling it to the highest bidder, that really can't surprise many people, can it?
No, it doesn't really surprise people. They know that there are lots of hacker groups out there that are doing this sort of thing. Fortunately, it appears that this group has only been renting out their lists, if you will, for the distribution of spam, and has not been providing it to people who are going around and either stealing it for identity theft or using it to steal money out of bank accounts. There's a lot more damaging things that could be going on with a list of this magnitude than what appears to have happened. So perhaps we're okay in that regard, but it is a warning shot across the bow to all of us of the importance of having good cyber personal hygiene.
All right, now let me speak a little bit to that point you just made here about that warning shot. Here's a quote from Alex Holden, founder of Hold Security, talking to the New York Times about this entire incident. Hackers did not just target U.S. companies. They targeted any website they could get, ranging from Fortune 500 companies to very small websites. And most of these sites are still vulnerable. Steve, that's the part that hits me right here. Still vulnerable when we have known for some time that whether it's the Chinese, the Russians, or a bunch of kids basically sitting in a basement somewhere in Topeka, Kansas, that they are out there looking to hack these sites and do everything they can to get into it.
Well, you do have a spectrum of situations here. In some cases, they're small companies. They're doing the best they can with security, and it's not very good, so they're very vulnerable. Other organizations, websites have done everything they can to an extraordinary level, invested lots of money, lots of effort to secure their websites, and they're still vulnerable because the hackers are very talented, very motivated. They can make a ton of money, and they don't have to follow any rules. So there's a dynamic here that isn't just, okay, we took the right steps, now the bad guys are locked out, we're good to go. Unfortunately, we have not yet found the silver bullet that secures websites or information in the way most of us would like them to be secured. There's a lot of folks trying to get there because they can make a lot of money once they reach it, but it's very, very difficult for companies to do against a very determined and very capable set of adversaries.
Steve, what should these companies be doing that maybe they're not doing, or maybe they need to be doing better in order to protect their information?
Well, they have to keep their stuff updated. They need to be in contact with security organizations. Hold is one, Mandiant is another, FireEye is a third. There's a ton of them out there, and most of them are constant battle. That's tough for a lot of small to medium-sized companies to really deal with, that constant reinvestment in security. And even big companies, in tough economic times, they're saying, well, we don't think we're being hit right now, so maybe we'll forego that next upgrade in security. And unfortunately, that's a mistake. They have to stay vigilant. They have to actively defend their perimeter, if you will, and their whole system. Otherwise, the bad guys are going to get in there.
I did a little research here, and I've been doing this for a while, looking into passwords and everything else, because let's face it, we are all involved in this one way or another. And there are things called password managers that are out there, which is, in my research, I'm looking at things from experts saying frequent password change is completely unrealistic. IT administrators even don't use it. They talk about alphanumeric strings in order to put into your password here. What we're talking about here is something that it seems most consumers would simply not be willing to do, that it's almost above their head, and they go, wait a minute here, you're asking me to do way too much here. I mean, I only got a few accounts here. So is there really any way to use all this? Is any of this really the way?
Companies that are looking at other biometric ways to secure it besides passwords. Some folks use fingerprint readers. People have discussed using iris readers. Someone even jokingly said, well, we should get something where you just lick the back of your phone and that allows you to sign in with your DNA. That one, I don't think anyone's developed yet.
Yeah, I can't quite see that one becoming very big on the consumer market. I don't know how you'd quite have to sell that in a retail store. That'd be fun.
But, there's a lot of people trying to come up with other ways. Passwords are, you're right. I mean, most of us have tons of accounts. Having a different password for every one of them is tough. Most of us have trouble remembering one or two, let alone dozens. So it's very difficult. They should be things that are not readily breakable. Please don't use password and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are a lot of ways you can do it to be more secure, but there really isn't any way with just passwords to be completely secure.
All right.
So we're still in that fight. We're trying to get there, but we're definitely a long way off.
Steve, I have to ask you, because you just brought it up. Every time this comes up, and it comes up an awful lot anymore in the news, where we see these breaches and we talk about it, and the security experts come in and there's password changes, it's still absolutely, well, maybe it doesn't amaze me as much as it might, but that there are people who still will use, and I mentioned this leading into the segment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Password 1, 2, 3. They will drop their birthday sitting in there, and they think that they're safe. Isn't it fair to say, though, that simply some people can't be taught when it comes down to this? They're just going to do whatever they want and say, well, it won't bother me. That hurts everybody else down the line. It makes it easier to get everybody's information.
It does. People, there's a lot of denial. They always think, well, why would anybody hack me? I don't have that much money. I don't have any kind of information they'd want. But they do go in, and if they can get into your stuff, perhaps they can get into somebody else's that are on the same website. Some of the stuff in this report says that this group wasn't even breaking the passwords. They were literally bypassing them, getting into the website system to get all the passwords that everybody used. And then they would go to other websites where you were a customer and see if you were using the same one in different places. So there's a lot of connectivity. I mean, it's the internet. It's all connected. And the problem is no one is beyond the attention of these bad guys. If they can get your stuff, maybe they can get mine too.
I got about 30 seconds left. How alarmed were you when you heard this? I mean, did you go right out immediately and change your own personal passwords, or?
Wait until I see, from the different accounts that I have. If they notify me that I need to, I'll start taking the action. But I try and use different passwords for different accounts. I try and do it the right way, practice what I preach. But it's hard. It's hard to keep changing them. How much imagination do most of us have? It's a difficult situation.
That's unfortunate when you just said that. How much imagination do we have? That's a little bit frightening, I think, on top of all of this. Hey, Steve, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thanks so much for your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
When it comes to foreign policy, and after the break, Cityscape heads for Memphis, Tennessee, and Election Day. That means all bets are off. We question everything right here on MidPoint.